It's a tough week for some of the NFL's best running backs. The AFC West shows why it's the best division in football, and we tell you how to build your own Georgia Dome. That's coming up now. Welcome to One Super Bowl Way, home to me, your host, Mark Hogan, on this September 18th, 2017. Hello everyone. Week 2 is almost in the books, with the Patriots returning to winning ways, Marshawn Lynch scoring his first touchdown since 2015, and the San Francisco 49ers almost hold Seattle in Washington. But where else would we want to start than somewhere we stopped last week, in the AFC West, proving that it's the best division in football, I think, this week. Last week I ended the show pointing out that perhaps Trevor Siemian wasn't up to task. Well, they showed up against the Cowboys yesterday and absolutely took them to town. Did everything go right for them, or are they just that good? I have a feeling that they're just that good. The famed secondary was matched with a defensive line that stuffed the juggernaut Dallas offensive line, so much so that Ezekiel Elliot could only rush for 8 yards. Getting rid of the run game, the Broncos forced Dak Prescott to throw into that secondary, where he just wasn't able for it. Jason Garrett coming out and saying afterwards that Dak just needed to be more efficient and making smarter plays, more accurate plays. And the biggest place where they fell down, I guess, was on third downs. He said third downs was the biggest issue for them all day. They only converted 3 of 14, while this defense absolutely dominated. Aqib Talib, even at the end of the game, picking off Dak Prescott for a 103-yard touchdown. And it didn't even stop there. That's one side of the ball where the defense absolutely held a Dallas offense that is supposed to be able to compete with anyone. Well, they weren't able to compete with the Broncos yesterday. And then on the flip side of it, this offense is supposed to be the one that holds its own defense to ransom. Some people say the defense has to win games in zone and hope that Siemian doesn't mess it up for them. Well, Siemian ended the game on a 116 passer rating. He, through 16 starts, is now higher than Mariota, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, and only 0.7 points behind Matt Ryan. It's his fourth time as a starter going over a QB rating of 100. So I don't know why we're not discussing it more. I was to blame last week. I said I didn't really trust Siemian or the quarterback situation in Denver. You wonder, was Paxton Lynch going to be getting involved? You wonder just how long Siemian can stay as a starter before being benched. I guess he doesn't get the respect that he deserves, seeing as he's not a first round pick, but this team absolutely loves him. Even Aqib Talib saying he's their man, that the defense loves him and trusts him to win the game. And you can see that now. If he had been a first round pick, you'd trust him more, but I guess we're all learning now that Trevor Siemian is a viable starter. He's been doing it for a while now, so why don't we trust him? I guess if you have him on more prime time games, he's going to break out. And you could say, oh, this was just one brilliant game that he beat the Dallas Cowboys, but they were planting seeds as far back as last week playing the Chargers, when the scheme was to throw balls to the tight ends and that, and almost planted the seed in the Cowboys' heads. Oh, we can't just look after Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. Emmanuel Sanders goes for 2 touchdowns. Demaryius Thomas went for 70 plus yards on his 9 catches. CJ Anderson, the running back, 154 total yards and 2 TDs. And you kind of have to compare this to the Dallas offensive line, are the ones that should have been putting up these numbers. You're expecting Ezekiel Elliot to go for 154 yards, 2 touchdowns. You're thinking Des Bryant is going to be the one with 2 TDs, a massive number of yards. But instead, it's the Denver Broncos that put the league on watch, saying, no, we're the better offense and the better defense. Big surprise, I guess. No one really could have seen that coming. Dallas went in as a favourite. The Denver Broncos saying, we're here now, we are a top team, staying 2-0 in their division. They did get off to this kind of a good start last year, so plenty of work still to do. But the Broncos, against a top team in the Dallas Cowboys, absolutely blew them out of the water. There's no excuses from the Dallas Cowboys. They just said we were beaten by a better team on the day. Sean Lee was taking a lot on himself, saying that he just wasn't making plays. He just wasn't able to beat anyone that he was against. He just could not out-tackle any of the Denver Broncos. And it's when people like that start coming out and start giving the fair dues to the other team. Jerry Jones going as far as saying that his team were not where he thought they were before the game, and in fact it was the Denver Broncos that were in the position where he thought the Cowboys were. He said the Cowboys now do centre around their offense, that they're not going to go for that defensive look, or they didn't hope to go for that defensive look that the Broncos have. But he said that Denver Broncos offense is where he thought his offense was. There was a big compliment from Jerry Jones, the recent Hall of Famer. So Denver Broncos could be here to stay. Very interesting though. We're going to cross over, stay in the division in the AFC West with the Chiefs, who also had an absolute fantastic day. I want to start with Alex Smith. I love Smith as a quarterback myself. I didn't really buy into trading up for the Mahomes and that Patrick Mahomes was going to be starting 5 games into this season. Alex Smith looked so solid yesterday. I think he got sacked 4 times he got sacked yesterday. And his toughness in that game, to see it out, 2 touchdowns in the final quarter against a really tough Eagles defense. Thought Alex Smith really showed his worth in the NFL. He could be a starter for any team. I don't believe in him getting benched this season, or any of that going to carry on. His toughness and his calmness in the pocket, it's going to see him out for another for the rest of the season at least, on a Super Bowl contender. Now it must be said, when you can match up the offense, just like the Broncos we talked about a second ago, matching up offense with defense. That offense was on fire with their quarterback. And then you have Kareem Hunt having another day like he did. He went for 81 rushing yards on 13 carries and 28 yards on 3 catches. 2 more touchdowns, 1 receiving and 1 rushing. The receiving touchdown was just as, or almost as big as the 78-yarder that we talked about last week. 53-yard run he did this week. 5 TDs in his first 2 games. That's matched a record that was set since 1921. He's only the 3rd person to get 5 TDs in his first 2 games. Big record there. Funnily, after his second touchdown, the receiving touchdown, going into the new rules that allows a bit more of excessive celebration, he lied down and he slept on the ground. He said to tell the league to stop sleeping on him, that he's here to stay, and I don't think anyone's questioning that right now. He's having an absolutely marvellous start to his professional career. We really look forward to following it a bit more. And then I suppose we'll flip on to the defensive side of the ball, where they're also matching that offense. Last week Eric Berry went down. He's out for the season. We said it was very unfortunate. Love seeing Eric Berry play. Obviously he has such a history now. You have to like the guy. The defense had to stand up with that marvellous player going down last week, and they did, a couple of them, but in particular the likes of Chris Jones, the defensive end. He recorded 3 sacks, 2 fumbles and an interception. The interception setting up what would be the game-winning touchdown for Travis Kelce. The defense recorded 6 sacks. The special teams, even then, the long snapper forces a fumble on a punt return, and it's just all-round smart football, I guess. In all 3 phases of the game, they're matching each of the other units. The offense with Alex Smith, Kareem Hunt. The defense with the like of Chris Jones getting his sacks up. The interceptions, and even how the interception was knocked down to Chris Jones by another defensive back. So the Chiefs really stepping up at the moment. Obviously their win against the Patriots last week was fantastic. It wasn't a fluke by any means, but I suppose it was a bit of a surprise. But the Chiefs going up against quality teams now and pulling out wins, just like the Broncos. That division, they've 3 2-0 teams: the Raiders, the Broncos and the Chiefs. All fantastic. Even the Chargers could do things later on in the year, but you wouldn't want to be in that division at all. It's pretty tough. And the team that's going to obviously be one of the Chiefs and the Broncos' biggest competitors in the AFC is going to be the Patriots. They had a bit of an injury scare this week, so we're going to go check that out now. In the form of Rob Gronkowski, he did his groin, but it came out today that it's fortunately not too serious for the tight end. He went and scored his 69th touchdown. You know, he's going to enjoy that one this week. He recorded 116 yards on 6 catches in the game that he left in the 3rd quarter. He's day by day at the moment. The Patriots expect to have him back by this week. Another tight end that won't be back by the weekend is Greg Olsen. He has a broken foot and is expected to miss at least 6 games, maybe more, maybe up to 8. He did have surgery today. Ron Rivera, the head coach, saying that it went well, but IR is possible, seeing as he's going to be out for so long. Olsen came out today and he said he's been pretty lucky with injuries in the 10 plus years He's had 159 consecutive starts, but when he went down in the second quarter, non-contact, it didn't look good. He was pretty emotional after the game, and you can see why. It's going to make Cam Newton's job a lot harder. He's going to lose his favourite receiver, his favourite passing threat. So Olsen pretty upset that he's broken his foot, but we're glad the surgery went well, and we hope to have him back soon. Staying within that division, we'll move over to the Falcons. Star defender Vic Beasley, who did a slight hamstring tear last night on Sunday Night Football. He's going to miss about a month, unfortunately, which is going to be huge for this Falcons team. 15 and a half sacks last year, most in the NFL that was, but yet the team still remained in the middle of the pack for defense last year. So you'd wonder, with him gone, is the pass rush going to hold up, and how much so? It's looking like he could be back for October 22nd when the team faces the Patriots. Obviously a replay of last year's Super Bowl, but that's not happening until week 7. They do have a bye in week 5, which luckily for them it means he's going to miss one less game if the timetable stays good. Dan Quinn wasn't actually specific about that timeline today. He only said that Vic Beasley was going to miss week 3, but reports coming out today not good that Vic Beasley will be missing a few games, and it's going to put more pressure on that offense of Matt Ryan's. Another team whose offense isn't doing quite well at the moment, or certainly this week just gone, was the Vikings. They've been missing Sam Bradford after he went down with a knee injury. The Vikings hope to have him back though this week. They said there was no structural damage on the knee, it was just discomfort and swelling. The Vikings put Case Keenum in his place, and the team only went for 237 total yards against the Steelers, having gone 470 total yards against the Saints in week 1. They did lose this week 26-9, which obviously wasn't a good sign. So I wonder, are they trying to rush back Sam Bradford too quickly? He is a quarterback that has had knee issues in the past. If you're rushing him back just because it's week 2 has gone by and you've lost the game, haven't put up a high total number of yards, I'd fear that they're rushing him back too much. The ligaments could tear. It's obviously been weakened now with an injury. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. Can he stay healthy? And maybe if you can't stay healthy and you're going with Case Keenum, you're throwing your season away. So maybe just give it another week. I think maybe you do drop another game, but I think it's better than Sam Bradford dropping for the whole season. But obviously they know a bit more than we do. Sam Bradford expected to come back later in the week. But they say a quarterback's best friend is his running back. Sam Bradford's for a brief period had been Adrian Peterson, and he was one of the running backs this week that didn't have a great week. Going into the weekend, there were storylines about whether Adrian Peterson would stay with the Saints throughout the season because he's having a bit of trouble coping with his place as a backup. There was this shot captured when the Saints played the Vikings last week of Adrian Peterson apparently calling Peyton an asshole. It's come out since that he was saying, no, let's run the ball up their asses, but it certainly didn't look like that at the time. A bit of tension came out of that, but the two men, the head coach and the running back, said that wasn't the case, that they had no issue over it. A couple of words were said in the plane home, but it didn't really go too much further than that. Adrian Peterson unhappy with his role as the backup running back at the moment. Former players coming out this week saying that Adrian Peterson needs to accept his role as a backup, but Adrian Peterson maybe has too big of an ego to do that. He was upset when he didn't get the touches against his former team, the Vikings. He really wanted to show them up. He wasn't able to do it. He then came out and said 9 snaps wasn't what he went to the New Orleans Saints for. But then Sean Payton comes out and says they didn't even discuss him being the featured back. I guess when you've been that featured back for so long and so good at what you do, being the perennial Pro Bowler that he was, future Hall of Famer that he is, it probably is hard for him to adjust to the nine snaps that he saw. Not even touches, he got 9 snaps in the entire game. It did kind of improve this week when he was given a few more. He rushed 8 times for 26 yards. It only makes sense to put him into a game when you're already up and you're trying to run down the clock a bit. The Saints at the moment don't look like they're going to be doing that. They do have a good offense, but they're not putting up the scores, especially against the schedule that they have. It doesn't look like they're going to be putting up big leads big enough to put Adrian Peterson in for more snaps. So Peterson perhaps needing to reevaluate where he is, what he wants in the future, and whether he'll stay in New Orleans as the season goes on, or will they trade him to the likes of the Eagles that could perhaps put him in the role that he wants. But Adrian Peterson now, the former star, the current star, you could almost argue, is Ezekiel Elliot, one of the best backs in the league at the moment. He didn't have the best of his career, but he definitely had the worst, or certainly on paper. He rushed 9 times for only 8 yards against the Denver Broncos, who we obviously talked about earlier on. The blame certainly can be put wholly on Ezekiel Elliot. The Broncos ruled out the running game and made Dak throw it, so he was receiving less carries anyway, but they definitely shut up the running game through pure force. The Broncos, I mean, did. So Ezekiel Elliott wasn't getting his touches. He just wasn't getting his big plays that he's used to. This is probably the first time in his career that he's faced some adversity, especially being in such an embarrassing losing position is probably how he felt. But then he goes onto the sideline and he threw, it's kind of a tantrum, I guess, not dissimilar to what Odell Beckham did last year. Now, Odell Beckham last year made it more obvious. I'm talking about the Week 3 game against the Redskins when they lost 27-29. It was the whole playing against Josh Norman game again. Odell went and kicked the kicking post or the kicking apparatus, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't on that level. It wasn't that obvious. But Ezekiel Elliott goes over and sits on his own, doesn't say anything, rather than hyping the team or rather than trying to spur their team on, taking a bit of accountability and say, look, I'm not doing it, or trying to recompose himself. He went and sat on his own and just kind of sulked. It made LaDainian Tomlinson come out today, obviously a fantastic back that he was, and he said, which is big news today, that Ezekiel Elliott kind of quit on his team, and you can definitely see why. The big story was the Chris Harris interception of Dak Prescott. So Chris Harris intercepts Dak Prescott, and you'll see now that Ezekiel Elliott makes no effort to go back and chase him down. Now, some people will be in the camp, well, you don't want your star running back to run after a player and pretend to try and take him down, because Ezekiel Elliott probably wasn't going to take him down. Some people will say, oh, he was facing the wrong way, there's no point even attempting. I wouldn't agree with that. I would say that you do have to put some kind of pressure. Even your presence there rules out them running to one side of the field, I think. And it's just, you do it for your team anyway. If you're as part of a team and you're normally getting the glory, well, look, if something's gone wrong, you're actually going to have to go back, I think, and try and make a tackle or try and do something, try and get the team up for it, even to show that you're into it. Like I said, you're trying to hype the team. I was disappointed. I can see why people would say that he quit in his team. I certainly thought that when the going got tough, he got going. After the game, Ezekiel Elliott was a bit more composed. He said, last year at this time we were 1-1. It's a 16th season game. I guess that's very true. And then he laughed as he said, you don't want to peak right now. You want to peak at the end of the season and get rolling. I guess that's true as well. He was averaging 108 yards in his last 16 games. The lowest he's gone in a game is 51 in the last 16 games. Going for 8 yards definitely made him unhappy, but we'll hopefully see him bounce back against the Arizona Cardinals on Monday Night Football next week. If it's the same kind of showing, it's going to be on national television this time. Hopefully he's able to pull it back next week. Someone that mightn't be able to pull it back next week because they might be on the field or even active is Eddie Lacy, who's made inactive this week in the Seahawks versus the 49ers game. Disappointing probably for Lacy, a former star, a former rookie of the year in 2013, former 1,000-yard receiver, who now has been put as the number 4 running back after all these discussions throughout the summer, the whole thing about making weight and all this. He wasn't active in the game. Pete Carroll, the head coach, coming out and saying it was only down to the matchup that they were playing the 49ers, and they didn't think that Eddie Lacy, the big down back that he was what they required. He also put the blame, saying that Thomas Rawls was back from injury and that they wanted to get Thomas Rawls involved. So when you have CJ Prosise and the new man Chris Carson, you didn't need an Eddie Lacy. Probably that's only saying things to the media, because I mean, Eddie Lacy still wants to be active and potentially in the game in case someone drops down. I don't think having 4 running backs active is too much of a stretch. But then when you see what Chris Carson did, 93 yards on 20 carries, I think he's the firm favourite now to be Seahawks main back going forward. Rawls only had 4 yards on 5 carries. CJ Prosise is not too much better. So Carson, the 7th round pick this year, the rookie, looked very strong, and it's going to perhaps worry Eddie Lacy going forward. the biggest thing for Lacey might have been that he has it in his contract that he gets $62,500 for just being active on game day. So he lost that, and I don't think he'll want that happening too many times going forward, because it'll accumulate into an awful lot of money. But it's time to look across the road now to our neighbours in one Super Bowl drive. Occupying the space this week are the New England Patriots for their beautifully efficient 2-minute offense against the New Orleans Saints. So to set this one up, the Saints turn over the ball on downs with 2 minutes 23 seconds remaining on New England's 25-yard line. They could have taken the points, but they were in a position that there were so many points behind that they really need to get something going on offense, perhaps score a touchdown and go into the half feeling good about themselves. Well, they couldn't have really gone in too much worse after they saw what was going to happen next. An absolutely fantastic drive from Brady and co. The first play sees Gillislee on a 9-yard run. Great running with 2 minutes 23 seconds on the clock. Play number 2, you see Brady go on one of his trademarked QB sneaks for 2 yards, bringing the clock down a bit more. Then you see James White on an 8-yard pass. This one was called back with a flag on holding, so they went 10 yards back. 1st and 12 that becomes. Then White again next, 23 yards, big play there. The clock at 1:31 ticking down, brings the ball to the New Orleans 44-yard line. Then you get Hogan, the wide receiver, a 25-yard pass, brings the ball right up to the New Orleans 18-yard line. So with the seconds ticking off, they go for James White. Doesn't work out for them, so they call a timeout. This next play, absolutely beautiful. Brady escapes a bit of pressure. Fantastic back shoulder pass to Gronk, but he can't catch the touchdown. Really not like Gronk. I really want that one back. But Brady escaping that pressure was absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, he didn't go for the touchdown. So on the next play, play number 8 with 21 seconds left, Brady scrambles 7 yards up to the New Orleans 10. This is where the drive was really so smart. You see all the New England Patriots players getting off the field. They know exactly what to do if that third down wasn't working out. So Brady starts moving with 12 seconds left on the clock. The kicking team comes on and all the correct players get off. The correct players get on. So perfect work from substitutions. Allowed Gostkowski to kick a score, or to attempt to kick a score. He gets that off his boot with 2 seconds left on the clock. So a 6-point swing at the end of the half. I'd say the Saints were absolutely kicking themselves. They're probably just delighted that they didn't give up the touchdown. The Patriots weren't getting the ball back after half time like they usually like to do. So I suppose they gave the kick in the teeth now, and then let the Saints try and catch up later. So it was 30-13 going in at half time, when it could have been 27-16, and less scores between the two teams. The game ended up 36-20, and it was that class that makes the Patriots so good. Tom Brady ordering around his offense so well. That's why they're such a favourite for the Super Bowl, and that's why they're occupying one Super Bowl drive this week, showing just how good they really are. But do you know who didn't show how great they really were the Browns this week. A funny situation meant that Deshaun Kaiser was out. He left the game questionable because of a migraine, and left Kevin Hogan stand in as a quarterback. So the down we want to replay this week starts on the Baltimore 45-yard line. It's 1st and 15 to Cleveland with a few seconds, less than 30 seconds left on the clock in the half. They probably just want to get to halftime, but before halftime, let's see can we work the ball up and get some points. Kevin Hogan gets greedy on this play. He's trying to throw the ball to wide receiver Rashard Higgins here, but he has 3 Ravens defenders around him, and replay the down is all about poor decisions, and this was certainly one by Hogan. That decision was bad. I guess we could almost leave it there and forgive it, but what really added insult to injury was what happened next. Flacco gets the ball at the Browns 40-yard line after the 27-yard return by Bowser. Flacco gets it, and 3 plays later, including one monster play by Devorius Allen, a 37-yard run, it ends up the Ravens getting a touchdown courtesy of Jeremy Maclin. I mean, it could have been 14-7 going in the half. They're not going to take a kneel. Potentially they could have taken a kneel. They're at that kind of position in the field. But Hogan thought, let's get something going. He got greedy. He should never have thrown that ball. 14-7 before that. It turns into 21-7. But the game ends up 24-10. So there wasn't that too much scoring to go. If they'd flipped those scores around, the Browns really could have been in contention to win that game late on in the fourth quarter or what have you. I guess it was just poor decision making by Kevin Hogan, and that's why that's this week's replay the down. But I wonder, does the next name wish he could redo some things? Dean Spanos, the owner of the now LA Chargers, they had their first game in the StubHub Centre this week, and I guess things could have gone a lot better. The excitement of them moving really didn't go according to plan. Besides not selling out the 27,000 seats, the seats that they did sell, a lot of them went to Dolphins fans. So much so that Jarvis Landry, the star wide receiver for the Dolphins, came out and he said it's always good to take over somebody else's stadium. I guess in your first regular season game at the stadium, you're wishing that you could at least have some of your own supporters in there. That comment was matched by quarterback Philip Rivers, who said a few more wins and the fans will come. Well, I mean, you wish they were coming in the first week to show support for their new team. When Philip Rivers continued on with his comments after the game, he kind of suggested that when kicker Young-Ho Koo, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that name, when he kicked the would-be game-winning field goal and a big cheer goes up from the crowd, he actually thought that meant that the Chargers were after winning the game. In fact, it meant that the Dolphins fans were just that loud, and it didn't help then that fireworks and the cannon went off by the sound guy. So really not what you want to see in your new stadium, even though it's this fantastic new 20,000 seater intimate stadium. Problems didn't end there. Referee Tony Corrente announced the San Diego Chargers had taken a timeout at one point, and again before the game, a plane went over asking who was the worst owner in sports. Dean Spanos, it said, pay your bills. So really not getting off to the great start that they wanted in the StubHub Centre. The reports from the stadium are good, obviously that they have a great atmosphere, but going forward the Chargers are definitely going to want to get more tickets sold, and tickets sold to Chargers fans. It doesn't look like they're going to win over those San Diego fans. People are still pretty annoyed that the team moves, so you're going to wonder, are the LA Chargers too late to the party? Have the Rams got would-be football fans rooting for them? Not how the Chargers wanted their move to go, but still a cool stadium that people that do go to the games are going to have a great time at the games in. But maybe the StubHub Centre could do with your help building its own stadium or its own Georgia Dome. Obviously, Mercedes-Benz Stadium was holding host to Sunday Night Football last night. The first regular season action there, Falcons beating the Packers in a great game. But across the road, the Georgia Dome remained empty because it's obviously no longer being in use. It's going to be imploded in November. So owners are selling off all memorabilia that was inside. So you're able to buy everything from the banners that hung from the ceiling to the pads that wrapped around the goals, which is a pretty cool memorabilia. You don't get to see that stuff coming up too often. You even have the chains for sale that were used in different matches or different games. So funny here, there's current bids on Matt Ryan's locker for $525. That's sure to go up. Julio Jones's locker, $825. It doesn't come with the chair that you'll see featured in the picture. 50-yard markers from the pitch that were used obviously in the NFC Championship game. Current bid on them is $550. The second one is going for $260 at the moment. And if you want something a bit more modest, you can go for the bribes notice in case any players want to be taking bribes. $30 if you kind of want to spend that money. My money's on some $25 headphones. Fingers crossed I get them. So that's all for this week's show. We're looking forward to seeing the Giants take on the Lions on Monday Night Football later. The Giants obviously getting off to that really poor start in Dallas last week, so it'll be interesting to see Odell back later on. And with that said, we'll leave it there. I've been your host, Mark Hogan. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in one Super Bowl way.